Just to clarify, as the moderator tonight, what we'll do is I will call out the person's name that presented an item or they had a thought or something they wanted to tell Lori about, and you can then stand up and present your question, because that way I want to make sure that I didn't paraphrase it and present it. You know, I want to make sure that it comes absolutely the way you want it presented. Listening session, and it can be a comment.
It should be, really. Because I'm here to listen to you. I'm here to learn what your opinions are.
And that's the point that we want to drive home tonight, is Lori is here to gather information from you and to listen to you. Tonight is not a debate, whether it be from you towards Lori or vice versa. It's not a debate from one person to another in the crowd. So civility really is what we're looking for, and I know we can achieve that. But the way we'll achieve that is through a couple of different house rules. If someone says something that you like, I know that it's really easy and really encouraging to want to applaud or let something vocal out. And that sounds all fine and good when you agree with that kind of a question or input. But also, think about the person on the other side. So let's refrain from that. And likewise, anything that's a little bit more derogatory, a little bit more condescending or critical, we'll leave those out as well. Simply because if you do that, and I know you guys get this, but I just want to state it, Lori doesn't get to hear from you. She's entering into this race to represent you. And she wants to know what it is that you are asking of her. And tonight's your opportunity. We do have you putting it in writing so that should we run out of time and we don't get to you for some reason, she is having follow-up. She has a process in place in which, because you filled that out, she will follow up with you if you gave your contact information on there. Does anyone have any questions about the format that we're going to follow tonight? All right. Well, good. With that, let's go ahead and get started. If I did properly introduce myself, my name is Gary Olson. I am a resident of Lake Mills and not part of any particular party or anything, so just being asked to come in and do this with you. But you may see my name out there more and more as this goes on. So, is that fair enough?
Yeah, I guess so. If you're willing to help out.
All right. Lori's voice isn't as strong as it should be, so we're going to have to listen a little bit closer. And if you can't hear, let us know.
Yeah, just raise your hand in the back if you can't hear me. I'd just like to start off with giving you a little bit of an update on the whole election process. I was just notified today, you might have seen it in the news, that the Government Accountability Board has recommended certification of the recall election. It's just, we found that an hour really isn't very long to talk about all the things that people want to talk about, so we're trying to find ways so we can, make the best use of our time. So, the election is likely to be certified. I mean, it's virtually guaranteed to be certified. The question is when exactly it will be. It looks like it will be in early May. Now, there might be a primary. That means the Democratic Party has not identified anyone else that they want to run against me, but there's a high likelihood, I guess you could say, that Fitzgerald will recruit someone to run against me, to pretend they're a Democrat and run against me. That would force a primary, and in that case, that primary election would be in early May instead of the general, which will make the process go out longer, and then the general election would be in June. So that's where we stand now. Nothing is super definite, but they have found that he had sufficient signatures to certify the election. Also, voter ID. I was just kind of paging through here, and a lot of people had questions about voter ID. I just was looking on the news on my phone, and it looks like that has been suspended or stopped. So, again, it's up in the air. It might be appealed, but from what I understand, a second judge has ordered that law is unconstitutional. So, as of right now, if you want to, I'm giving some silent time. one of the most troublesome provisions of that law for our volunteers was that we're very interested in making sure that as many people as want to vote can vote. We think it's really important, especially for poor people, that they get better representation in government, and they are often not registered because they move more frequently in general. And one of the things that was troublesome for our volunteers was that if I wanted to, a year ago, register someone to vote in Fort Atkinson and Koshkonong, say, the township surrounding Fort Atkinson, I could get deputized and I could register anyone in the state. But one of the provisions in that law was that I would have to get deputized in Fort Atkinson, and then I would have to get deputized in Koshkonong. If I wanted to come here and work with the volunteers here, I would have to get deputized here. And so you can imagine that's a long process, and it's really hard to set up the appointments to get those deputizations. So I'm really happy, just for that reason. It makes it a lot easier for us to register voters. So with that, do you want to?
I tried to talk Lori into doing a fireside chat so I could have a podium, but she said no.
Oh, you can have the podium. I'll just
I think she's trying to increase her stature here. She wants to stand. Okay, so the first person I have, and if I mispronounce your name, please bear with me, I have, is it Barbara Lotman? Barb, if you'd like to stand up, tell us what it is you'd like to say to Lori.
Why don't you start with someone else? Because Grant might speak last, so I don't think that's fair.
I shuffle. I can shuffle again, Lori. Or Barbara, I can shuffle again. All right. That one I don't see a name. The same question. So I have a Barbara Wright. So Barbara.
So one of the things that I have a concern about, and I should say that I'm from Madison, but I'm very interested in getting community-supported agriculture going in the 94 corridor, so that runs into your district. And one of the things that I have concerns about is that Scott Fitzgerald has been being called the king of the welfare king of the legislature. That he has now collected $18,000 worth of per diems this year alone. How do you feel about the per diems? Do you need to stay in Madison and wine and dine with friends, or how are you going to handle that?
Well, and here's where I need to step in and just say, I love the question, but unfortunately, if I let her answer that one, then I'm going to be going against everything I just said, and that is, I want you to tell her things that you are concerned about, thoughts that you have. If she starts to put everything back tonight, I'm not going to be able to get to everyone that's on here. I'm sure she has thoughts on it. I know those of us that are helping her have thoughts on it.
Okay, I just want to make everyone aware that Scott Fitzgerald has been doing that. And not very many of us would get to have an extra $18,000 to be able to spend. So I guess I'm hoping that when you get to the state senate, that you will be one of those people, there's a couple of other folks who only get maybe $1,000 for gas mileage and that kind of thing. If Wisconsin votes, then we need to economize. One of the ways we can do that is to keep people from doing that kind of fraudulent. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I just want to go through. Eventually I'll start reading some of the questions that don't have names. I'm just going with names that I have right now. I believe it's Dan. Is it Herbal? Help me out. I'm just like, Dan, if I... How should have I said that?
Close enough. I would like to discuss the mining bill in northern Wisconsin. I grew up in northern Wisconsin, spent most of my young life in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin until I went into service. I love northern Wisconsin. In fact, I still have the old farm I was born in, Park Falls. Spend most of my life out in the woods hunting and fishing. The problem I have with the mining bill, and I think the problem we have, do they need employment in that area? You got places like Glidden, Shannon Golden, Cayuga, you got Upson, maybe even Ashland, maybe Park Falls, Glidden. all of those people, all of those places up there, it's very, the employment is basically nothing up there that these people have for employment. The problem, I think, with the Republicans, when they did this, and I think power leads to arrogance once in a while, and if they'd have called, in fact, the mayor of Mellon, they invited him to the meeting, I believe it was in Milwaukee, the first one, that they had the mining companies, and the Republicans were having and deciding on what rules they were going to have. The mayor of Mellon was so upset with the way it was handled that he did not even go to the meeting. So that's one party, and that's a town that really needs some employment. The second one was the Indians have a tremendous amount to say about this mine. If you remember the Crandon mine, they closed down the Crandon mine when there was mining to be had. And instead of asking the Indians to come down, or excuse me, I'm sorry, instead of them going up to that region and talk to those people, they stayed down in Milwaukee instead of inviting them to talk. So they excluded the Indians. Most of the Republicans can't tell you the two major waterways that it would pollute if it happened to pollute that area. And probably not many in this building, this room right now, can tell you the two major waterways that mine would pollute, but they happen to be the Tyler Forks and the Bad River, and they both meet in Copper Falls. And if any of you have ever been in Copper Falls, you know how beautiful that area is. So that would be a place that we have to be concerned about it affecting. Can this thing work? Yeah, it can work, but it can't work under the way they went at it. Why didn't we go to Minnesota and ask Minnesota, what do you do about your mining rules in Minnesota? And you know how many lakes and streams there are in northern Minnesota. Why did we go to them and ask them, say, what kind of rules do we have in Minnesota that would allow this to happen? Most of you can't tell me where the water, if they use the water, in which direction does it go? Does it go to the Mississippi? Does it go to the Great Lakes? Does it go to the upper peninsula? Well, it goes to the Great Lakes. And I want to tell you a story about the Great Lakes. They had a mining.
Hey, Dan, I'm sitting here going, I want to hear this story, but at the same time, here's what I'm going to challenge everybody is, how do we, I'm hearing you, and I want to make sure we're posing this as, what do you want her to do?
Okay, what I want her to do is meet with the people that it involves. Go up there and talk to those people that it involves. Don't sit down in Milwaukee with the mining companies. Exclude the mining companies. Get together with the people that it's going to affect and then come up with a rule. They did this, if any of you are familiar, they had a mine in Ladysmith, not too far from the Flambeau River. And guess what? It worked out. There was no pollution and it worked out because they had some rules that the mining companies had to abide by. And until we do this, you just can't go ahead and say, boom, let's do this on our own because we have power in Madison. And it's just absolutely ludicrous. Those people would exclude those people up in northern Wisconsin. So I think you have to get together with the people up there and let them sit down and make some decisions on what's going to happen in their area because it affects them. And guess what? Right now, apparently it's not going forward.
And Wisconsin does have mining laws, so.
Right.
I feel like if the company really wanted to bring a mine to Wisconsin, they could follow the law, but the impression I get is that they looked at the law and decided that they could not, it wasn't economically feasible to build a mine that would be in compliance with the law, and so they, apparently Scott Fitzgerald said on a video the other day that they built the bill that recently failed. So, you know, people say, oh, we're not getting mining, and they're pointing fingers of blame, and I say, well, we've got a mining law. Follow the law, and you can have your mine.
The next person I have is Judy, is it Schweiger?
Yes.
Where's Judy? Judy, what would you like to say to Lori tonight?
Well, I think Lori, we met yesterday, and I thank you for giving me time to speak yesterday. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I don't know which one you're looking at. The one I did want to talk about voter ID again. That's really dear and near to my heart, and I know you, just by what you said earlier, a lot of people are glad it's going to be dead, or it looks like it might be without appeals that are going on. But I've learned of someone, this is one instance in one town of a person, undocumented, illegal, whatever you want to call that person, who uses the light bill, his light bill for his residence and goes and votes. He's not registered, he's not legal, he's voting in our elections. I just heard of people who come from Illinois or one of the outlying states, lives in a hotel for 20 days, 28 days, 30 days, whatever the requirement is, and they go vote and then they merrily go home. There's no ID to prove where they live. That concerns me. I mean, I hear all the time that if it only stops one rape of one woman, let's do the law. If it only saves one child, we need to enact this law now. What about if it keeps my vote from being disenfranchised? That somebody doesn't come illegally, what would you like to do? What are you proposing in place to keep track that we have legal elections, our people are legal and residents of Wisconsin that are voting here? You know, I just want to say, we can stick our finger in ink. I don't care to prove that we have voted. It just doesn't prove that we are legal Wisconsin residents. Okay?
Okay, so yeah, just a quick, if you are aware of something like that, you should definitely report it.
Sure.
Obviously, so.
Yeah. But voter fraud does happen, and I heard you say that it doesn't happen enough, that we need to worry about it.
Yeah,
Even once is enough.
well, but when you look at the number of particularly elderly people who aren't able to get to the DMV, I think that there are so many more.
There's all kinds. Okay, I'm not going there.
We disagree on that.
Yes, we will agree to disagree.
And Judy, I appreciate that. That's what I hope we can continue tonight with, because my wife and I don't agree on everything.
No.
With that said, it's a pretty strong, healthy relationship. All I want to say is, I think that's really where, in a little bit I've come to know Lori, that's where Lori's at, is she wants to know, what do you want? She may have an opinion on it, but she has to represent us. And that's what tonight is for. So as long as we don't pin her into trying to give an opinion tonight, because she's still collecting information. And I appreciate you taking it from that standpoint, Judy. And you did try and squeak 2 in on us.
I did. I'm sneaky.
You had one here about the DNR.
Yeah, I understood. I heard you were employed by the DNR. Are you?
I used to be.
Used to be. That's what I wanted.
I used to work as the forestry web person, I guess you could say. So
Okay. Just curious.
part-time.
Okay.
The next person I have is Tom McGarvey, excuse me, Tom McGarvey. Tom, did I say that right?
Yeah, mine was more of a question than a statement, though. I just wanted to know what she felt was the most pressing issue that she'd have to deal with.
What I've heard, I can tell you what I've heard from going around talking to hundreds of people during the petition drive, and now hundreds of people on these listening sessions. The things that keep coming up, the main thing is healthcare. That just comes up again and again, both from business people. Can you guys hear me in the back? I feel like both from business people, and I include myself in that. I have a small business, and it's very small. It's just me, simply because I can't pay for other people's health insurance. I can't mentally make the leap to commit to doing that. And I feel like I would have more freedom as a business person to grow my business if I knew that my employees' health care was taken care of by some other system, if I could buy into some kind of pool or something like that. So, so that's the main thing I hear from people along the spectrum of economic wellness, I guess you could say. Of course, we're hearing from a lot of people that they're hurting because Badger Care, the cuts to Badger Care that happened right before Christmas. Education is another huge thing. People are talking about that a lot, and we might have time to go into that a little bit tonight. The other thing that I'm hearing at these sessions is transportation, which didn't come up at all in the petition drive, but people really seem to be concerned. They say they remember when there was bus service to Madison, really regularly, and to Milwaukee, and even within some of these larger towns, and they missed that. And we were just talking before the session started about how a lack of transportation really keeps poor people down. You know, if you can't get a job, or if you can't get to a job, that really limits your options. You have to walk to work, and for a lot of people, that's just impossible. So, so those are three of the things that I've heard a lot about.
I'm just curious, were there some in there that you had in mind that
Nope.
didn't come up? Okay. What would you put to Lori as a challenge in trying to find, in trying to find what those main topics are?
What would I put to her as a challenge?
Yes. Yeah.
Like what she should use to find those things out?
Well, just, yes, I'll say it like that.
I guess these listening sessions are the best thing.
They really are. Like that transportation, I wouldn't have thought of on my own. I mean, I drive to Madison a lot, but I had never really thought about the idea of, maybe if we had some kind of regional transit authority or something, and we had people really working on this, that would be amazing.
Transportation is really huge. If somebody has 200,000 miles on a car that gets 50 miles per gallon, and it costs $3 a gallon, to get that far, that's almost $40,000 in gasoline. If you stop and think about it.
My question is, where are you gassing up? Because I want to go there.
Average that. Over the last few years, you've averaged about that.
Okay, the next person thank you. Next person I have is Dave Rupnow. Dave, what would you like to say to Lori?
Well, my concern with what's going on in Wisconsin is that we elected a governor who did not say what he's going to do before he became governor. He talked in generalities, and then later on he's quoted as saying, now I'm going to drop the bomb once I get to become governor. And that includes everything from laws that have split families and neighborhoods and communities to the voter ID law, which nonpartisan studies have shown that the number of people with voter fraud has been under 0.01% in Wisconsin, while the number of people that may be disenfranchised by this law could reach up to 200,000. So those are my concerns.
So basically, kind of debate and switch. You were told one thing and then.
Well, one blended in. I'm sorry.
Okay, just one. Okay, so true about her in office, she put down that.
Exactly.
And the voter ID for like disenfranchises.
Thank you.
Just want to be sure that we're getting it down.
Okay, our next person I have is Wanda. Wanda, I have no idea how you say your last name.
It's Udovich.
Thank you. I wouldn't have got that 10 tries.
Yeah, I'm going to
Wanda,
pass
what
on.
would you like to
I'm
say?
going to pass on this because there was another voter ID comment, and you kind of addressed it, and Judy addressed it, and so that's fine.
Thank you. But don't feel like you have to. I mean, if it was said slightly different than how you wanted it, that's what we're here for.
Well, it was all about the disenfranchisement. I just don't quite understand it yet because I have a 84-year-old relative that just moved into the state from across the country, and historically, not just with her but with others, if they knew what needed to be done in order to get the services that needed to be provided, they always found, and she did when she moved to Wisconsin, found a way to get an ID. Get identification. There has never ever been a problem with that until a year ago when all of a sudden there's this big problem, and I just don't get it. I don't get why everybody's saying that there's this disenfranchisement when people a lot older than us have never had a problem getting an ID, and they know exactly what they need identification for. They couldn't get half of the services that they're entitled to if they didn't have proper ID.
Does anybody in here know anyone who's been?
My mom had worked for the poll and had always, she was a poll worker. She was actually a very staunch Republican all of her life, and she always felt that voting was a duty, and she was always a poll worker. And in her later years, she went to try to find a copy of her birth certificate or something else, and there wasn't one. And so, even though she's passed away, I always keep thinking that if my mom was alive now and wanted to register to vote, she wouldn't be able to, and she would be mad. So, knowing that this kind of laws were passed, because she felt that voting was her duty, and if she didn't do it, she'd be doing something wrong. And so these kinds of laws limit people. My family did find out afterwards that the reason why she couldn't find a birth certificate is that it had been stamped illegitimate, and they got rid of all of those.
And speaking of limit, here's where I'm going to step in again. How can someone, for example, someone hears something like that, because we've already, just in a short time, heard, very simply put, and I appreciate that, people on both sides of the issue. But this is what you need to hear. How can they get hold of you if they want to present? Is there a way in which they can email you or mail you? What works for you?
My website, loricompas.org. Right now, it doesn't have an email on there, I don't think. That's because I don't have a campaign manager yet, and my own personal email box is overflowing. I think I've got hundreds of unread emails. But as of tomorrow, I will have a campaign manager, and so we're going to start getting people organized, getting volunteers organized, and things will start falling into place so that if you have a question for me or someone else from the campaign, the email address will be on the website. You can also just submit comments to the website. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. It'll say like, submit a comment, and it will notify my campaign manager that you submitted a comment, and then someone will get back to you.
Okay. The next person I have is Dick Pass. Can you tell that I never grew up in this area?
You're doing very well.
I am Norwegian with the Swedish spelling, so good luck on that one. I'm sorry if I slaughtered that.
Oh, no, you did very well. I live one town over in Oconomowoc, and Oconomowoc, like Watertown, observed the very painful process of watching a 21st century train system very likely come our way, along with the over $800 million of federal funds which would have been spent in Wisconsin building that system. So we'd be connected, this town, my town, would be connected through the Milwaukee-Chicago service with the largest market in the Midwest, the largest employment center in the Midwest. It seems a good guess that it's probably going to be several years before we have a shot at that kind of federal money coming to Wisconsin. It may never come our way again. That's almost $1 billion with its obvious multiplier effects. Would you be open to federal money coming into Wisconsin so we all don't have to work so hard to have a prosperous state? Would you be more open than your present opponent to that?
Yeah, can I throw back? Posing that as a task of Lori, is that what you would like her to do?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. I'm just, because I can see this just spinning out of control in the debate, okay? And I don't want to stymie what you're doing. I just want to know, what are we asking of her? Okay. Is that fair enough? So you're...
Sure, yeah.
So you'd like to encourage...
Yeah, the context, would you be encouraging of federal money coming our way to enhance the economic development of this state?
If that seems to be the will of the people, then certainly, yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Barbara, you are up this time. Tell me no. I'm going to feel rejected.
Well, there were several comments I wanted to make, but quite a few people have already covered some of the things that I was going to talk about. So I guess maybe business and economic development. I know we all know that things have been rough for all of our small communities. The last several years we've been losing a lot of manufacturing and other businesses. And so I really think that we need to find some ways to work together. Together seems to be a huge problem in Madison right now, but we need to make find some ways to work together to bring more sustainable jobs to the community, to all of our local communities. We're all small rural communities. Again, I agree with the gentleman who made the comments about mining. I grew up in northeastern Minnesota, the Arrowhead country, the mining country of Minnesota. I saw many years ago what happened when those environmental rules were not in place and the devastation it caused to the area when I was a teenager. It's only taken them about 30 years to finally figure out what they're going to do to fix that, and they have been fixing it for probably about the last 20. I don't want to see that happen to northern Wisconsin. I want to prevent that to happening from northern Wisconsin. Sustainable mining can be done, but it has to be done right, and it has to be done with the environmental factors have to be in place. We all know, or at least I know, that large mining companies, if you let them do what they want to do, they're just going to devastate the total environment. They're going to contaminate the water. They're going to contaminate the land. You're going to have huge mountains of iron tailings sitting up there. I saw all that for years in northern Minnesota, and I really don't want to see that happen in Wisconsin. I could go on about healthcare and education, but I won't. I'll stop there.
Well, if we have time, we probably should talk about this. I did want to point out while we're on this topic, you might have noticed on these sheets there's a place that says I'm interested in working with others in my community on developing solutions, especially something like economic development that's such a huge topic. I really would like to try and build some local teams to make recommendations to me. So, you know, this is a condensed campaign. We've only got a couple of months, and yet I still feel like this is a good opportunity. I've already had someone just today email me and say, what was that guy's name in Columbus who was talking about his experience in business? I want to get together with him because I think we're kind of on the same wavelength. So I would really like to build some teams around the district to connect business people or people who would like to be business people, and so they can talk about ideas that they have and then make some recommendations to me. So if you are interested in that, please, because you know, people might email me and say, who is that person? And I have no way of knowing. And if you indicated on here that you're interested in business and economic development and would like to share your expertise and then put your contact info, I will not sell this, I won't give it away or anything. You might get some emails, you know, saying, do you want to come to a campaign party or something like that. But this is a great way to meet new people in your community who have similar interests and also help me get some really solid ideas about what we can do. Okay, so I encourage everyone to.
Okay, our next person I have is Nate Tim. Nate, what would you like to ask for, Nate?
It's not asking, I guess it's sharing.
Thank you.
Lori, I thank you for your courage to step up and represent the people. My comments are around... I guess I'd like to ask a question of the audience, seeing that there's no rules about that. How many of you know what ALEC is? Let's see your hands. Okay, a very well-informed audience. Because my comment to you, that stands for American Legislative Exchange Council, and my comment to you would be there's several issues that have come up here this evening that are directly a result of the agenda that they create. And as we all know, who know about this, know this is a group that's organized on behalf of the bazillionaires, not the people who are in this room. Unless some of you are a lot more wealthy than I think you are. So, I'm going to do a twofer like you, man. I can be just as sneaky as you are.
Way to go.
She's running, we're not. So what do you have for
So here's the deal. Voter ID is across the nation being advocated by ALEC. A relaxation of regulations is an ALEC agenda. And relaxing mining agenda, I've spent over 25 years traveling to the Lake Superior Basin, and I know wherever you speak. It's Lake Superior is the largest surface area of fresh water in the world. The pollution of that area would endanger that area. I don't care how many jobs you're talking about. It isn't about jobs right now, because those companies, Lori, I hope you will, when these kind of things are proposed, will investigate thoroughly the issues involved. Because most of us know, when a mining company comes in, it promises a bazillion jobs. A bazillion. There's going to be jobs coming out everywhere and anywhere. But when you go to the places where they have done mining, you will find they do not hire a bazillion local people to do the mining. What do? They hire their professionals from other mines because they don't want to trust this some local amateur who doesn't know how to use their equipment. And they're not in the business of creating jobs for the sake of jobs. They're in the business of making money. And so I hope you will always investigate carefully any proposition that is made, because it could really be catastrophic, as it could be up there if this mine would have gone forward. It would have endangered the Indians of the Red Cliff Indian Reservation. It would have endangered the watersheds of that area. And just think about how many jobs around tourism for the infinite future that would have been endangered. Who is going to want to go, like the lady says, to a place in northern Minnesota that's polluted and hummocks of tailings? Who's going to go there to vacation? Thank you.
Alright, so now that everyone knows that I'm not an attorney and I didn't lay out the rules. Try not to explain it as bad as Nate just did. Alright, with that said, I have Barry Smith. Barry, where are you at? What would you like to say to Lori?
You say that a lot of people are talking about healthcare, and there's a reason why. I myself am a 26-year-old non-traditional college student, victim of the economy, and I've been hit with $100,000 in medical bills, which I'm lucky because they wrote it off. You know how scary that is at 22 years old, on top of having to make a choice on whether you live or die, and bankruptcy and death, you know? That's scary to me. And, well, I'm not going to sit here and say that we shouldn't cover single mothers and their children. We absolutely need to cover those people. Those are the most important people and the first people you should cover. There's non-traditional students, people like me that are victims of the economy that have not been able to get the health care that we need. Mental health care. And diabetes on both sides of my family, I would probably have it, you know, it's just not taken care of. And there's a reason why healthcare is brought up time and time again. It's not okay. I see a lot of right-wing folks talk about entitlement. You're damn right I'm entitled to healthcare. Please, make it a priority.
Barry, thank you. All right, here I have a question with no name, so
Can I just say a little something about
it's
healthcare?
your show. You can say whatever you want.
Well, you said you were 26, and that is kind of a magic number now. I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but I'm a wedding photographer in the summer months, and I was just commenting to my husband last year that it doesn't seem like many young people are getting married anymore. Like, my husband and I got married when we were 24. And a lot of people seem to get married like right after they leave college at 22, 23, 24. And I am not seeing that anymore. All the people that are getting married now are 27, 28. And, I mean, not all of them, of course. But about a year ago, a couple did get married that were 22. And we got to be friends. We friended each other on Facebook, and I've been keeping up with their lives and stuff. And they told me that they had not been aware when they got married that apparently there's a part of Obama's Affordable Health Care Act is that now if you're a young person you get continued on your parents' insurance until you're 26. And that's nice because it lets you graduate from college, you got a couple years to get a job and get on your feet, and then you kind of have to have your own health insurance. That's true unless you get married. So they got married at 22 and were dropped off their parents' insurance. They were punished for getting married. And they have had it so rough since then. I mean, like, these are hardworking kids. They come from really supportive families, big families. I think they each had like 9 kids on each side. They had a huge wedding party. And that just, to me, is really tragic that we're penalizing these young people who love each other so much and would like to get married and start a family, and they're hit with this. So it's just so unfair from so many different angles. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Universal health care.
Sir, if you have a question,
I just have a comment to go with the healthcare.
well, as much as I'd love to, it's going to get us in trouble. But here's what I'm going to, no, because I've got people up here that really do have something. If we get to the end and we have time, I will open it up for that. But if not, that's why I pointed out, how do you get a hold of Lori in case you don't?
Or fill out one of these sheets and hand it in.
And hand it in, and we can still get you at the end. Okay? I don't want to come across as being rude. I had somebody that didn't put a name on this, and they posed it as a question to Lori, which I'll say what the question was. Why are the Dems so against balancing the budget?
That's nice.
Okay. Your name, ma'am?
Flo Jordan.
Flo, can you turn that into what it is you would like to challenge Lori with? Because otherwise, if she starts pushing back on that, answering back, we turn into debate. And what is it that you would like to tell her about your feelings towards balancing the budget?
Well, I want to see the balance, the budget balanced, and spending cut back, because it's not, there's not an endless amount of money there to keep spending as we've all been spending. So.
So you'd like to see spending cut?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I have another one, I don't see a name on it. Oh no, okay, the question looks like, a little bit about your background and...
If you've been contacted, I'm better at reading this thing.
You are.
A little bit about your background, and if you've been contacted by any unions to promise to restore collective bargaining for public workers or veto a budget that didn't accomplish that, Kathleen's blocked it. Well, as a senator, I wouldn't have veto power, and I had not been asked to sign any kind of pledge whatsoever. I think union people are eager to get behind this campaign, and I think that's great, because they're workers, they're local, they're here in our district, and so if working people here in the district want to pool their money and support the campaign, I'm thrilled with that. But I won't, but I haven't been asked to sign any kind of pledge. Thank you for the question.
Thanks for helping me read that. Okay.
It's actually nice handwriting. It's cursive. Some people don't know cursive.
I have Tom, is it Levy or Levy?
Levi.
Levi. Look at that, 2 shots and I got it wrong. Tom, what would you like to say to Lori?
Well, I want to thank you for putting your name in the ring. It's interesting when people stand up for power. We've heard a lot about power in Madison, power that is centralized in our government in this state, as well as our country. But I'm reminded of the picture in Tiananmen Square in 1989, when that sole individual stood in front of a tank. And unfortunately, you're going to be in that position.
Didn't actually run over it.
But at any rate, I would like to see you address some of these issues in Madison. Number one, shared revenue. Shared revenue is very important for our municipalities, for our school districts, that there's a partnership between the state and local government to help pay for the services that are given where the rubber meets the road right at local government. And local governments are very responsive. School boards, common councils in our state, part of our government. But what would you do to restore the shared revenue cuts that current administration has levied, with the idea that local governments can make that up by simply taxing their workers and their property owners more, taxing their workers, firing them. City of Watertown, for instance, has laid off 18 people in the last 2 years. There's been no pay raises for any of the employees for the last 3 years, just to meet the budget cuts that are required by decrease in shared revenue. So please address that issue at the state level, as to restore shared revenue, or at least if you're going to change the formula, give us some advance warning. And I think that's one of the main things to do. Also, just help you to cut down on the divisiveness. And there are people here from both sides of the aisle, and that's great. We have to have that kind of interaction in order to get good public policy. So what steps do you take to cut down that divisiveness in Madison? I did, in my early years, work from the Lieutenant Governor's office for the Consumer Protection Council. And we would see, this is back in the 70s, we would see Republicans and Democrats on the floor of the Senate, on the floor of the Assembly, arguing tooth and nail. But then they'd walk out, they'd be friends. They'd get together at night, etc. So I think that doesn't exist anymore. There's a rank partisanship there, and that does not foster good public policy. I would also like you to address, speaking of power. The power is privilege, not something that someone can inherently hold on to. Exercising power means you respond to the people in this room, not the people in the boardroom, not the people in the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce Association. What can you do to speak to the constituents here, represent what we need in Madison for the Senate district here all up and down the central part of our state? I believe the current occupant of that office has lost that touch with the people in this room. And that's the arrogance of power. That's what has to be changed. I would ask that you address that issue and speak to that arrogance of power by responding, like that one gentleman in Clinton Square, that the people speak. Thank you.
Tom, just before I move on to the next person, for those of us in the room that don't fully understand shared revenue, without explaining, all I want to know is there a place where they can go to learn more about it?
Yes.
Just because I don't want to make the assumption that we all know something about it at the same level.
The Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance is a nonpartisan group in Madison that monitors the spending in the state government. They put out a wonderful publication called, I think, the Wisconsin Taxpayer. It comes out monthly. The library, I believe, has it. You can look at that and look at their website and find out more about how the state government works. But the shared revenue is essentially part of our income taxes that we pay to Madison comes back in the form of shared revenues, payments back to the local municipality and our local school board to reduce our local property tax level. And the policy feeling there is that the income tax is more progressive. It's more fair because it treats people on their income as opposed to the property tax, which is just on the property. People who are elderly and own their own home have property, but they have to pay a lot of taxes and they have fixed income. So the way to balance that is through shared revenue. The state participates in helping local municipalities foot the bill for our local services. So that has been cut a lot to reduce the state budget, and it's always been a partnership. So I would like to see that restored so that there's egalitarian kind of treatment throughout the state.
Thank you.
Well,
Next I have Mike Klaus. Did I say the last name right, sir?
you got it.
All right. Mike, what would you like to, I knew I'd get one right. We're down to where, Mike, you are one of the 4 remaining people. Mike, what is it that you'd like to talk about?
I'll make it quick, yeah. I guess for about 40 years I've had a strong personal reason to want to see the enactment and enforcement of stricter drunk driving laws. And for the past 24 years since I came to Wisconsin, I get this distinct impression from time to time that many, if not most, of the legislators on both sides of the aisle are in the back pocket of the capital lady, like distributors, wholesalers, merchants, whatever. Or I'm interested in your personal feelings and thinking on this and how those would affect your
I'll tell you what, I am always scared of getting hit by a drunk driver, and you know, it's just, I think a lot of people are, and you hear about these people who have conviction after conviction after conviction, and they go out and it's funny. So yeah, I definitely am with you on that. I would like to see stricter enforcement and stricter, you know, stiffer penalties for drunk driving. You know, my dad had an interesting idea, and I don't know if this would ever fly. This is my dad kind of, you know, spewing ideas. But he said, if you get arrested for drunk driving or convicted for drunk driving, they should take away your car and give you like a hot pink Ford Fiesta that's emblazoned with the person driving this car has been convicted of drunk driving before. Stay away. You know, and I thought, you know, because you hear about these guys who are driving SUVs and big pickups and stuff. And so, you know, give them a smaller car, force them to drive a smaller car, and make it be kind of gross. They can still get to work, they can still get where they need to go, but they're letting everyone know that this is a dangerous person driving this car. So, you know, I'm not saying that I would definitely carry that to the Senate floor, but I think we can think creatively about this and keep these people out of these big monstrous vehicles where they can do so much more damage. So, shout out to my dad.
I'm in the military, and I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me?
A big Ford Fiesta?
No. I've seen some crazy things for punishment, and I don't think they even go that far. Hey, it's your election. All right. The next person I have is Mary Campbell.
That's me.
Mary, where are you?
I'm right here.
And what would you like to say to Lori?
For the last, since 2008, 1,100 bills have been introduced across the United States affecting women's reproductive rights. Now, Senator Grothman has now brought this to the floor of the Senate. And I want, you're a woman. Do you want somebody controlling what you're doing? And I would think that most of the women in this room don't want somebody telling me what I can do to my body, or, no, sorry, you can't have birth control because you don't have insurance. Or women's rights. We fought hard for those women's rights. I tell my daughter, who is 38 years old, when I got married, I wasn't allowed a credit card because I was a woman. And my husband needed to carry the credit card. I don't want to go back there. And that's what it seems to be going back and forth. So please, guard my rights.
I've got 3 daughters and 2 female dogs and a wife, so I'm living everything you say. Boy, I can just hear them behind me right now, so I'm going to let that slide. I have 2 more people. I have Buck Smith. Buck, are you still here?
Yep. I have many concerns, mostly with Fitzgerald, but like what the gentleman brought up over here with the train, he missed the most important part, is that Wisconsin taxpayers, according to the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, are on the hook for $84 million in the repairs to the Milwaukee train station. And with the letter that I gave Gary, there's probably 15 other examples of things like that that have gone on in the last year of things where I think Fitzgerald and Walker is vulnerable that it's a letter I've written for Walker supporters who have signs in their yards to explain to me why I should support Walker. And I personally have an idea of how to create jobs which cost very little. It costs more time than it costs money. And it's a way to just put people together to form their own business and start on their own and stop waiting for someone else to hire them. And to make job creation self-funding, and also do anything you want as far as some type of social good with creating an alternative source of funding for schools. So at some point I hope to share that with you, but my biggest concern is jobs. And everything you've heard up until March 8th, last Thursday, was probably wrong. So as far as Walker's record on jobs, I would hope you would go to Wisconsin, the Department of Workforce Development, dwd.wisconsin.gov, upper right corner, click media. On March 8th, they put a release out of unemployment. It says unemployment 6.9%. Read about halfway down that. There is the seasonally adjusted jobs record for Scott Walker for the first year. The first 3 months of the year, 12,000 jobs were created. After that, there were 2 other months. One created 500 and one created 300. So for the entire year, 12,800 jobs were created. There was the month of June, which they claimed 14,800 jobs were created last year, and that number is now 0. And you had 6 months of job losses, and when you add those up, it was 22,500 jobs that were lost in the other 6 months. So as a net loss, we had 9,700 private sector jobs lost. When you add that with the 10,200 jobs that were lost in government, we lost close to 20,000 jobs last year alone. And these kind of, everything I saw reported on the news last Friday, it either didn't mention any of this or the numbers they did mention were incorrect. So I hope you get a chance to read that letter I gave Gary. And there's just so many things that are just so wrong with what's going on. I hope you, stand up to these people and that you're successful with your whatever you want to call this, because to me anything's an improvement over Fitzgerald.
We are at the end of our time, but we have one more. So what I'd like to do is honor that one, and then if you have additional things that you would like to get a hold of Lori about, she has made herself available through her email, which will start up tomorrow. And there's other ways that you can get a hold of her. I'm sure she's not going to run in the first minute after we close this down. But I have Gerald, is it? What is it? Kreutzmann. Gerald, what would you like to say?
Well, I would like to be able to comment on something that Tom Levi had remarked on before in terms of aids that the state provides local governments. Okay, but the state does something else, okay, in terms of property tax. And Mr. Fitzgerald likes doing this. He likes handing out tax exemptions. But you have to understand that every tax exemption means a tax increase for everybody else. In Watertown, okay, I complained to Fitzgerald's office about this, and he said, well, we give you state aid, that should take care of the problem. Okay, and I complained to the city assessor's office about this in Watertown, and that is the large number of residential pieces of property that are tax exempt by the state. There shouldn't be any residential property that is tax exempt. Okay, I have a neighbor who owns, well, he doesn't, okay, Maranatha Baptist College owns it, a $350,000 house. He doesn't pay any taxes on a house. He sold his house to Maranatha for $1. So they're on the record as the owner. And he pays his mortgage, but he doesn't have to pay any property tax. And as a result of that, he gets relieved of over $6,000 of property tax. I'd like to be relieved of my $5,000 of property tax. Okay? To me, what the state has to do is simply say, if it is a residential property, okay, it doesn't make any difference who lives there. If it's a residential property, it pays taxes. We had a priest in my church. Okay, he lived in the rectory of the church. the church paid no property tax. He had 5 kids, okay, and they were on free and reduced lunch. Okay, all those services they got, okay, no property tax being paid. 2 years later, we rented the house out. We paid $2,400 in property tax, okay, and those people had 1 child. Now, where was the equity, okay, in the situation of that piece of property not paying any taxes?
So just be sure you got that down. So do away with tax exemptions. If it's residential, it should be taxed.
So I'm going to give Lori a chance to do the concluding remarks, but what I want to say is, as moderator tonight, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in, and I really especially appreciate your civility. I've seen a lot of different listening sessions with different people, including Senator Fitzgerald. I've seen some really good ones, and I've seen some contentious ones. This tonight is one that you should be very proud of yourselves for, because I personally know I've seen people that are in this room tonight in some of those sessions on both sides of the aisle, and I think you guys really, I like how you presented it tonight, and I hope that we'll continue to have that. There are 172 plus thousand people in the district, regardless of which map you look at, 172 plus thousand people that she has to try and figure out what we want of her, and you coming out tonight is very helpful. The thing I'd like to say is I really appreciate coming out and being the moderator tonight. I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm actually a Republican that typically votes for Senator Fitzgerald. So for her to have me come out as a moderator, I thought that was kind of interesting. I've enjoyed this, so thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Gary said, and thank you all for coming out. We are kind of running a little bit late, so people who need to go are welcome to go, and I'll hang out for a little bit and talk with people if you're interested. Thank you all so much.